Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Sean Barnes, also known as Sandman, and I'm the host of the multi-award-winning Parareality Podcast. Since 2004, I've explored a wide range of paranormal and alternative topics, from hauntings and cryptids to conspiracy theories and extraterrestrial phenomena. My experience includes being a former U.S. government contractor with top secret clearance and decades of on-site investigations at places like Waverly Hills Sanatorium and the Jerome Grand Hotel. In addition to being an investigator of the unexplained, I also consider myself to be a conspiracy theorist. But I'm committed to being an ethical one. I believe that radio, podcast, TV, and YouTube hosts who discuss conspiracy theories have a responsibility to their audiences. We must not promote violence or illegal activities, and if any of us do, then we need to be held accountable for our words. Now, as far as the podcast goes, Parareality was named Best Ghost Hunting Radio Show in the 2013 Paranormal Awards, and just recently earned top honors in the 2024 Podcast Excellence Awards, including Best Paranormal Podcast, Best Host, and Best Co-Host. But today, we shift from discussing the paranormal to examining a different kind of belief: conspiracy theories. My goal is to apply the same ethical lens we use in paranormal investigations to this arena. We'll explore how conspiracy theories, when not grounded in responsibility, can morph from speculative narratives into catalysts for real damage. In our session today, we'll explore the psychological roots of conspiracy thinking, our needs for clarity, control, and connection. We'll analyze pivotal case studies from the 9/11 terrorist attacks and Pearl Harbor theories to Pizzagate, Sandy Hook denial, and the January 6th insurrection to see how disbelief can escalate into harassment or violence. And finally, we'll discuss how accountability can and must intervene through legal systems, platform moderation, and informed education. By the end of this presentation, I hope you'll be equipped to discern when conspiratorial content crosses the line into harm and feel empowered to hold speakers and platforms accountable. With that, let's dive into the psychology, ethics, and real-world consequences of conspiracy theories. To effectively tackle the challenge of conspiracy theories, it's crucial to define what they are. So, a conspiracy theory is a narrative that suggests a small, covert group of people are secretly working together to manipulate events for their own benefit. It's crucial to understand these theories because they often have traits that make them resistant to evidence and scrutiny. For example, they're often what's called unfalsifiable, meaning any evidence that contradicts the theory is simply dismissed as part of the conspiracy itself. Believers also tend to have a deep distrust of experts, which further entrenches their beliefs. It's important to distinguish between legitimate, confirmed conspiracies and unfounded theories. History is full of examples of actual conspiracies, like the Watergate scandal. That's where high-level government officials colluded to break into the Democratic National Committee headquarters. That was a real conspiracy, but it was proven with evidence. Conspiracy theories, on the other hand, lack that evidentiary support, and they often rely on speculation, innuendo, and a distrust of established facts. This distinction is vital for understanding the different implications of each. The appeal of conspiracy theories is deeply rooted in human psychology. They often serve as a way for people to find a sense of certainty in a world that can feel incredibly complicated and chaotic. When things don't make sense, a conspiracy theory can provide a simple, although sometimes false, explanation. This is known as an epistemic need. On an existential level, these theories can provide a false sense of control and safety. When people feel powerless, believing they understand the secret workings of the world can make them feel more in control. It's a way of turning fear and anxiety into a narrative where they have special knowledge. And finally, there's a powerful social component to this. Believing in a conspiracy theory can create a strong sense of group identity and belonging with other believers, reinforcing the idea that they're part of a special enlightened group. However, this can be a double-edged sword because it can also foster feelings of disempowerment among those who subscribe to them, because oftentimes there's no real payout. The moral and social costs of conspiracy theories are extensive. At their core, these narratives breed malicious accusations and can lead to unjust blame cycles. This can result in severe reputational damage for the individuals who are wrongly implicated. And beyond individual harm, they corrode trust in our institutions, such as the government, media, and science. And we're seeing that go on right now. When a significant portion of the population believes that institutions are corrupt or are acting maliciously, it becomes impossible to have a healthy public discourse or to solve collective problems. It's a foundational issue that undermines the very fabric of society. When beliefs escalate, they can cross a critical ethical line from speech to harm and sometimes even violence. While the right to free speech is a cornerstone of a democratic society, it's not absolute. This is where the concept of balancing free speech against the potential for incitement becomes critical. This places a huge responsibility on both individuals and the platforms that host their discussions. Online platforms have a significant role in moderating content that could lead to real-world harm. Additionally, every speaker must recognize the weight of their own words and understand their rhetoric can have serious real-world consequences. To understand the impact of conspiracy theories, it's helpful to look at how they've infected our understanding of history. Major historical events like the attacks on Pearl Harbor and the 9/11 terrorist attacks have become fertile ground for conspiracy theories. These theories often suggest that key governmental figures weren't just aware of the attacks, but also may have orchestrated them for their own gain. This is more than just historical revisionism. It's a profound undermining of public trust and a distortion of our shared understanding of these defining moments in history. The most prevalent conspiracy theory about the attack on Pearl Harbor on December 7th, 1941, is the advanced knowledge theory. The core of this belief is that then President Franklin D. Roosevelt and other high-ranking U.S. officials had prior knowledge of the Japanese plan to attack Pearl Harbor, but they deliberately allowed it to happen. According to these theories, the motive was to shock the American public out of the isolationist stance that they had at the time and to rally support for entering World War II. So a few key components often cited in this theory are things like intelligence failure. It's claimed that the United States had broken the Japanese diplomatic codes, also known as the magic intercepts, and they should have known about the attack. Another is the back door to war theory. This theory goes that President Roosevelt intentionally provoked Japan by imposing an oil embargo and freezing Japanese assets, forcing them into a corner and making them make an attack on the U.S. Strategic inevitability. And finally, there's the carrier's absence. A lot of conspiracy theorists point out the fact that all 3 U.S. Pacific Fleet aircraft carriers were not in Pearl Harbor. They were somewhere else on that day, and that's suggesting that they were intentionally ordered away in order to protect them. The conspiracy theories surrounding the September 11, 2001 attacks are wide-ranging, and they often overlap. The most prominent theory is that the attacks were an inside job orchestrated by people within the U.S. government rather than solely by Al-Qaeda. Some of the key components of this theory include the controlled demolition theory. This is probably the most well-known conspiracy theory for 9/11. People who believe in this conspiracy claim that the collapse of the Twin Towers and the World Trade Center Building Number 7 were caused by pre-planted explosives and not by the impact of the planes and the subsequent fires. They say that jet fuel fires are not hot enough to melt steel, and that the collapse looked like a controlled demolition. As far as the Pentagon attack goes, there are multiple theories about the Pentagon attack. Some claim that a missile and not American Airlines Flight 77 hit the building. Other people claim that the U.S. military was ordered to stand down and not intercept the hijacked planes, allowing them to do their damage. And finally, there's the conspiracy theory that people had advanced knowledge. That's similar to the Pearl Harbor theory about high-level government officials had, knowledge of the attacks, and they deliberately ignored intelligence warnings to justify military action in Afghanistan and Iraq, and to consolidate power and, get oil and money and make people rich. Both sets of the conspiracy theories share a common thread, though, and that is a fundamental distrust of the government and a belief that powerful individuals will sacrifice the lives of their own citizens to achieve political or financial goals. The dangers of conspiracy theories aren't just confined to historical events, and we all know that. Let's take, for example, the Pizzagate conspiracy theory. That's a powerful and recent example of how baseless rumors can escalate from online chatter to real-world violence. Now, the theory, which involved unfounded allegations of child sex trafficking, led a man to show up at Comic Ping Pong, a Washington, D.C. pizzeria, and he had an assault rifle with him. So this man was Edgar Madison Welch. He was a 28-year-old from North Carolina. He described himself as a father who, and I quote, just wanted to do some good. And he was convinced by the Pizzagate hoax that a child sex trafficking ring was operating in the basement of Comic Ping Pong Pizza in Washington, D.C. He claimed that he wanted to self-investigate and rescue the children that he believed were being held there. So he entered the pizzeria armed with an AR-15 assault rifle and a revolver. He fired the rifle multiple times inside the restaurant, and he hit a wall, a computer, and a locked door as he searched around for this supposed basement, this non-existent basement. And the incident, luckily, wasn't a prolonged standoff. It only lasted about 20 minutes. Welch entered the restaurant, fired a few rounds off, spent about 20 minutes searching for evidence of this conspiracy, of this supposed basement, and finding none, he peacefully, thank goodness, peacefully surrendered to police. And he told the officers that he had, and I quote this directly, found no evidence that underage children were being harbored in the restaurant, and he was arrested without incident. Now, this case powerfully illustrates that the real-world consequences of misinformation can be severe, even lethal. The attack highlights how A deeply held yet completely false belief can lead an individual to violent action, reinforcing the need for both accountability and responsible public discourse. Next, we take a look at the case of Alex Jones and the Sandy Hook Elementary School shootings. This illustrates the profound and devastating real-world impact of misinformation. For years, Alex Jones used his media platform, InfoWars, to promote the false conspiracy theory that the 2012 Sandy Hook massacre was a hoax. He repeatedly claimed that the shooting, which killed 20 children and 6 adults, was synthetic and staged by crisis actors as a false flag operation to promote gun control. As a matter of fact, he accused the grieving families of being crisis actors. And these accused families of the victims endured a decade of suffering as a result of these lies. They were subjected to relentless threats, harassment, and stalking by Jones's followers. Some were even forced to move, and they experienced severe emotional trauma because of this, including complex post-traumatic stress disorder. So Jones was found liable for defamation in multiple lawsuits by these families. And in one trial in Texas, he was ordered to pay nearly $50 million to the parents of one victim. And then a separate jury in Connecticut ordered him to pay $965 million to the families of 8 victims and 1 FBI agent. This brings his total judgment to over $1 billion. So will the defendants ever see their money? Well, it's uncertain how much, if any, of the money the families will ultimately receive, because Jones and his company, Free Speech Systems, have filed for bankruptcy protection. No surprise there. While a judge ordered the liquidation of Jones's personal assets to pay the families, the company's bankruptcy case was dismissed, leaving its future uncertain. The families continue to pursue legal avenues to collect the money to this day. And finally, we're going to close our look at conspiracy theories with the January 6th insurrection. This serves as a dire warning of how deeply embedded conspiracy theories can catalyze civil unrest. President Donald Trump's stolen election claims and his speech on January 6, 2021 have been widely cited by federal prosecutors and judges as a direct incitement for the actions of the crowd on that day. Leading up to January 6, Trump repeatedly and falsely claimed that the 2020 presidential election was rigged or stolen. Now, this is a narrative that was known as Stop the Steal. This campaign culminated in a rally on January 6, where he gave a speech to his supporters. And key points from his address that are frequently cited as incitement include the "Fight Like Hell" statement. Trump told the crowd, "If you don't fight like hell, you're not going to have a country anymore." That phrase and similar rhetoric was interpreted by many of his supporters as a literal call to action. He also said, "Show strength." As a matter of fact, he said, "You have to show strength and you have to be strong." And finally came his promise to march with them. He went on to say, "We're going to walk down to the Capitol and we're going to cheer on our brave senators and our congressmen and women. I'll be there with you." While Trump never joined the march, his statement encouraged the crowd to proceed to the Capitol. And many of those charged with their roles in the insurrection have stated that they were acting on Trump's orders. They believed he was telling them to do what they did. A 2024 analysis by Citizens for Ethics and Responsibility in Washington found that at least 210 defendants cited Trump's rhetoric and instructions as the reason for their actions. The Department of Justice's investigation into the January 6th attack is one of the largest in its history. As of early 2025, over 1,500 people have been arrested on federal charges, with over 1,270 convicted through either guilty pleas or jury verdicts. The sentences handed down have varied widely depending on the charges and the individual's actions. Those who only entered the Capitol illegally and did not engage in violence were most often charged with things like misdemeanors and given sentences that could include stuff like probation, community service, or just a few months of incarceration. People who assaulted police officers, damaged property, or were involved in planning the attack faced more severe felony charges, and the longest of these sentences were reserved for leaders of extremist groups convicted of seditious conspiracy, which is a serious felony. For example, Proud Boys leader Enrique Tarrio, he got a 22-year prison sentence. And Oath Keepers founder Stuart Rhodes got an 18-year prison sentence. Now you fast forward to January 20th, 2025, the start of his new term, President Donald Trump granted clemency to nearly everybody convicted of or awaiting trial for offenses related to the January 6th attack. Most people received full pardons, while the sentences for 14 members of the Proud Boys and Oath Keepers were commuted to time served, which just basically meant that they did what they did and they were immediately released. And finally, the January 6th insurrection serves as a dire warning for how a deeply embedded conspiracy theory can catalyze civil unrest. The substantiated claims of a stolen election galvanized people into violent action against our democratic institutions. The legal repercussions faced by participants reinforce the need for robust accountability mechanisms to protect our democracy and public order. Accountability for spreading conspiracy theories is becoming a major focus, both legally and ethically. Defamation lawsuits, like those brought against Alex Jones, are a growing tool for holding people and entities responsible for the harm caused by this misinformation. Also, online platforms are at the center of this debate as they grapple with the extent to which they should moderate content to curb harmful rhetoric. The increasing legal actions against people who these purveyors of conspiracy theories signal a significant societal shift towards greater accountability. The rise of defamation lawsuits is a prime example of this shift. Historically, proving defamation has been challenging, especially for public figures. However, cases like those against Alex Jones demonstrate a growing willingness of the courts to hold individuals accountable for spreading demonstrably false, harmful information. The financial penalties levied against Jones were substantial, sending a clear message that there can be severe consequences for propagating dangerous lies. And beyond defamation, other legal tools are being explored, like in some legal cases, professionals are examining if conspiracy theories could fall under different legal frameworks, like product liability for things like harmful wellness products promoted through conspiracy theories, or even incitement to violence, depending on the nature of the content and its real-world consequences. Ethically, the debate centers on the moral responsibility of individuals and organizations. Is there a moral obligation to prevent the spread of harmful lies, even if it's protected under freedom of speech? Now, this is a question that challenges the traditional notion that the best cure for bad speech is more speech, and it prompts a reevaluation of the limits of free speech expression when it causes direct, tangible harm. Online platforms like Facebook, YouTube, and X are at the heart of this debate. These platforms have become the primary conduits for the rapid dissemination of conspiracy theories, often amplified by their algorithms. They're grappling with a significant dilemma. How do they balance free speech principles with the need to prevent the spread of harmful misinformation? Now, initially, many platforms took a hands-off approach, claiming they were neutral conduits for information. But this stance has become increasingly untenable as the real-world harm of misinformation, including violence, health crises, and attacks on democratic institutions, has become impossible to ignore. In response to this, many platforms have adopted more aggressive moderation policies, including fact-checking, content labeling, and in some cases outright removal of content or banning users who repeatedly violate their policies. This has led to a heated debate. Critics of platform moderation argue that it amounts to censorship and a violation of free speech. But on the other hand, proponents argue that platforms have a moral and social responsibility to prevent their services from being used to cause harm. The legal framework around this is also evolving, with ongoing discussions about whether platforms should be held legally liable for the content they host, potentially weakening protections like Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act. And that currently shields these platforms from liability for third-party content. The increasing legal and ethical focus on accountability for misinformation is a symptom of a broader societal shift. There's a growing public awareness of the damage caused by conspiracy theories, from public health issues like vaccine hesitancy to the erosion of trust in democratic institutions. This shift is driven by the realization that misinformation isn't just a harmless oddity, but more of a tangible threat. As a result, society is beginning to demand that the creators and the purveyors of this content, as well as the platforms that host it, face real consequences. This trend signals a move toward more responsible digital ecosystems where friendly expression and free expression is balanced with a shared commitment to truth and public safety. Tackling the spread of conspiracy theories is a complex challenge, and it requires a holistic approach way beyond just legal and ethical accountability. It demands a proactive strategy that empowers individuals and fosters a healthier information environment. One of the most powerful long-term solutions is to integrate critical thinking and media literacy into our school curricula. Today's students are digital natives, but they aren't necessarily skilled at navigating the deluge of information they encounter on a day-to-day basis. So by teaching them to critically evaluate sources, identify logical fallacies, and recognize manipulative tactics, we can build a society more resilient to misinformation. This isn't just about telling people what to think, but it's about teaching them how to think, how to scrutinize a headline, how to verify a claim, and how to understand the difference between a reputable news source and a biased opinion blog. The goal is to create a generation of savvy information consumers who are less susceptible to emotionally charged and unsubstantiated claims. While we need to be cautious not to infringe on free speech, there's a growing consensus that we need more clear legal messages to address content that crosses the line from harmful ideas into direct incitement of violence. This is a delicate balance, and any legal framework would need to be meticulously crafted to avoid censorship. However, as the January 6th Capitol riot and other violent events have shown, words can have deadly consequences. Therefore, legal systems must evolve to more effectively address content that directly mobilizes violence, whether it's through the dissemination of conspiracy theories or other forms of hate speech. This isn't about suppressing dissent, but it's about ensuring public safety and preventing the use of misinformation as a tool for violence. And ultimately, this challenge can't be solved by just one single entity. It requires a cooperative effort involving educators, media organizations, and online platforms. Educators are essential for building the foundational skills of critical thinking. The media has a vital role in upholding journalistic integrity, providing reliable information, and clearly distinguishing between news and opinion. They also have a responsibility to avoid amplifying or sensationalizing conspiracy theories, which can inadvertently lend them credibility. Online platforms, as the primary conduits for information these days, must continue to grapple with their role in content moderation. This includes not only removing harmful content, but also redesigning algorithms that can inadvertently promote sensational and divisive material. Only by working together can these different sectors create an ecosystem where misinformation is not only less likely to take root, but also actively challenged and countered with facts and reason. The fight against conspiracy theories isn't just about deplatforming bad actors. It's about building a healthier, more informed society from the ground up. So while conspiracy theories may offer alluring and simple narratives, the risk is that they can incite real harm. It's common for people to hold beliefs in at least one conspiracy theory, but it's our shared responsibility to be accountable for the information that we spread. Individuals, online platforms, and our educational institutions, we must all work together, as well as our news outlets. We've got to all work together to navigate these challenges and ensure a more truthful and secure societal narrative. When unverified beliefs lead to violence or criminal acts, those who promote them must be held accountable for their actions. We owe it to our fellow citizens to be ethical, moral, and most importantly, responsible for what we say and what we do. This includes having compassion and being willing to have open conversations with those who hold different beliefs than us. Actively listening to others is how we grow and how we learn, and there's certainly nothing wrong with that. So in closing, let's take a minute to reflect on what we've explored today. We started by examining why conspiracy theories resonate, from psychological needs like certainty and control to social bonds within echo chambers. We saw how even seemingly fringe ideas like Pizzagate or the 911 inside job theories can spiral into real-world harm, from things like harassment to violence and democratic erosion. Through examples like the Sandy Hook defamation cases, the January 6th prosecutions, and platform moderation, we saw that both society and legal systems can enforce consequences when speech crosses the line into dangerous territory. We identified effective strategies, critical thinking, education, media literacy, inclusive dialogue, and thoughtful moderation, not just suppression, that offer stronger defenses against misinformation. As someone who identifies as a conspiracy theorist and hosts a public podcast, I owe a debt of integrity to my listeners. And we must speak responsibly, not inciting violence or illegal behavior. And if harm is caused, we must be ready to be held accountable for our words. Accountability isn't optional, it's essential. So, what can you do? Well, each of us, whether you're an educator, a journalist, a digital citizen, as they're called, or a content creator, each of us plays a role in this ecosystem. Think critically. Don't take claims at face value. Check sources. Verify facts. Multiple sources. Use them. Don't just watch a YouTube video that coincides with what your belief is. That's not fact-checking, and that's not doing research. Challenge thoughtfully. Engage skeptically, not aggressively, with conspiratorial claims. Support accountability. Demand transparency from platforms and creators, and advocate for actionable consequences when speech propagates harm. So, looking ahead, our mission isn't merely informational, it's ethical. Combating harmful misinformation is a collective effort. By blending intellectual rigor with moral responsibility, we can foster a healthier public sphere, one where truth and accountability prevail over conspiracy and chaos. Thank you for watching this lecture. I hope that this empowered you to discern and challenge when speculative narratives cross into harm. So let's continue this conversation beyond this room. Let's uphold the truth, and let's safeguard integrity in the stories that we tell and we share. So I would love to hear from you. My contact information is on this slide, email address and such. If you are able to scan the QR code, that will get you all of my contact information and social media outlets. It's been a pleasure to talk to you about this topic that I'm very, very passionate about, and I want to thank Ryan Sprague and all the staff of ANOMACON for having me. If you want to learn more about me, go to parareality.com. Parareality Podcast is available on the first and third Fridays of every month on all podcast outlets. Thank you all, and have a good afternoon.